Hey guys, what's up? So today we will be talking about the behavioral approach in geography. This particular approach became very popular after the quantitative revolution in geography. So this lesson is a part of the series on perspectives in human geography presented by the book Binger. So first of all, factors responsible for the rise of behavioral approach in geography. So this diagram again was used in the quantitative revolution. It can be again used in case of behavioral approach. So talking about the social environment. So after quantitative revolution, there have emerged several problems in late 1960s onwards, like problems related to human rights, poverty, inequality, racial tensions in the United States, environmental degradation, etc. And geography could not provide solutions to any of these problems. Then in the academic environment, there was Herbert Simons, a very important scholar, and he gave the theory of behavior and decision making, which became popular. And this theory said that humans are boundedly rational and their choices are usually habitual based upon their experiences. So, for example, you are said that humans are economically rational. For example, if here is a village and here is town A and here is town B, and there is some service that the villager wants to avail. So he may be going to town A to avail that service, even though town A has, when town B didn't exist, let us say, and he had been going to town A since years to avail that particular service. For example, a healthcare service. Then town B emerged and another hospital was developed in town B. So one was there in town A since long. But town B is now at a closer distance and town A is at a farther distance. But the difference is not very much. But still the villager may prefer to go to town A because he may have built some reputation in town A, or there may be some other work he would like to meet some people in town A because he would have built relationships with others in town A, and he is more comfortable in going to the hospital in town A. So in spite of a smaller distance from town B, he is willing to go to town A. So he is boundedly rational. So this is the idea of Herbert Simons, and their choices are usually based upon their experiences. So this experience of the person is compelling him to go to town A. So another point put forward was this boundedly rational behavior is due to the lack of full information and ability to fully interpret the information. For example, the person may not be having full information about the new facilities which may be better also in town B because he has never went to town B. Also, if he has information that the facilities are better, his experiences may not be allowing him to fully interpret this information in a rational manner. So just like I told, he may have built some reputation. So he's not he doesn't want to go to town B. He doesn't want to be economically rational. He is willing to spend a little more amount, but he wants to go to town A. So you can say that his ability to fully interpret the information is not based upon economic rational choices, and that is the point given by Herbert Simons. So this is how behavioral geography. This Herbert Simons was working outside geography in the domain of economics, and this particular theory was becoming very popular during late 60s onwards. So behavioral approach entered geography through physical geography, where a very important physical geographer, that is Gilbert White, studied the human adjustments to floods. So he studied how humans have been making adjustment to floods and hazards. So through hazard studies, behavioral approach started to enter geography, but still it was not entering into human geography. So within human geography, in the geographical environment, the role of QR was questioned by behavioralists, And they said that neglecting normative aspects of humans, which are imagination, memories, prejudices, feelings, and using a deductive approach was leading to slow building of models and theories, and also the models and theories built were highly inaccurate. So they were slow and inaccurate. So even proponents of QR like William Bunge started to question it. Started to question it means started to question QR. And scholars like Julian Wolpert introduced behavioral approach in human geography. And he said that models and theories must be developed using an inductive approach. So see the difference between behavioralism and quantitative revolution, and more realistic assumptions. That is, we should be including the normative aspects of humans also while formulating models and theories. So Julian Wolpert in his research tried to show the effect of normative aspects. He presented the difference between the decision taken by the farmers of Sweden and those which would be taken by an economic rational human. And he also developed behavioral themes in migration. So let us say if there is a farmer and this is his piece of land, so he might be growing rice in this much portion and vegetables in this much portion. But if you analyze it from the economic perspective, then he should be growing maybe rice in this much portion and vegetables in this much portion. So due to some other factors, or due to since he wants to reduce his work and vegetables require more human labor and rice farming is more mechanized, so he doesn't want to spend that much of human labor and he's happy with less income. So that's why he may be using that particular choice, or uh, he's happy. That is the reason. That may be the reason. So everyone is not fully economically rational. People are always boundedly rational. So this was the idea that was presented by Julian Wolpert. So let us try and understand the concept of behavioral approach. So behavioral approach attempts to understand human activity in space by studying it at the level of individual person. It involves analyzing data on human behavior and finding common patterns. The objective is to formulate laws and theories like quantitative revolution. However, it uses an inductive methodology and includes more realistic assumptions about human behavior while formulating laws and theories. And these are more relevant. Because QR, you see, considered only one type of human, that is economically rational human, and which is not always the case, as I just explained in the previous slide. So behavioralism tried to find the patterns of behavior and try to develop more realistic models. So behavioral approach believes that human decision making depends upon both objective and subjective reality. Thus, it tries to achieve a synthesis between the idea of positivism and idealism. So, you know now what synthesis is, and uses both economic theories based on least cost approach and psychological theories to develop models. So again, synthesis between least cost approach and psychological theories, or interdisciplinary. It is like an interdisciplinary study. Also, I would like to just explain this to you, although it will not, I don't think it will be directly asked in the examination, but still, behavioral approach is different from behavioralism. So these two terms are different. Behavioralism is a philosophy. Fine, behavioralism is a philosophy that tells us to study human behavior. So this is a philosophy, this gray box circle, and this particular yellow circle is the philosophy of humanism, and orange circle is the philosophy of positivism. And the place where these behavioralism and positivism intersect, this is behavioral approach. So why is it so? Because you know that behavioral approach is using the concepts of is using basically inductive methodology and realistic assumptions about human beings, but its objective is what? Its objective is to formulate laws and theories. And so this was the objective of positivism. And this realistic assumptions about human behavior, this behavioral approach is taken from humanism. So that is why at the intersection of behavioralism philosophy and positivism philosophy, we find behavioral approach. Similarly, at the intersection of behavioralism and humanism, we find the humanistic approach in geography. So let us try and study the development of behavioral approach. So before 1960s, Immanuel Kant emphasized the role of So before late 1960s, that is 1960s was the late 1960s was the time when formally behavioral approach came into geography. Before that also behavioralism, this philosophy could be seen in geography. How? Immanuel Kant in the classical period has emphasized the role of mind in determining how we perceive noumena and phenomena. He gave the concept of idealism. This is he. He gave the concept of idealism, that is, humans see reality differently due to the different psyche, which depends upon their feelings, imagination, and experience. And we must try to understand this psyche of humans through the recreation of their ideas. So remember that Sherlock Holmes wala example, and that is the case of behavioral approach. And behavioral approach was also seen in the works of Vidal de la Blache and Carl Sawyer, since they said that human behavior and human culture were able to modify the natural landscape into cultural landscape for Carl Sawyer. For Vidal de la Blache, it was uh, human human endeavor was able to modify Pays into generative AI. So, however, the contemporary behavioralism that we see in geography developed after 1960s, late 1960s, due to the factors that are mentioned in the previous slides. Fine, the social environment, the changes in uh, academic environment, and the changes in geographical environment. So, in a broader sense, you can say that behavioralism was also present before late 1960s. So, from late 1960s to early 70s, uh, from late 60s onwards, we know that contemporary behavioralism, the formal behavioralism approach, was present in geography. So, it can also be divided into two parts. Late 1960s to early 70s, it was the phase one of behavioral approach. So during this period of time, the focus was on study of behavioral pattern in space, and the reason behind the behavior seen was not studied. So this particular period was influenced by positivism and was not much useful in solving of problems. So during this period, there were the works of Julian Wolpert, and there were works of Boulding, who developed a conventional model of man-environment relationship. Then there was behavioral matrix of Bread, and structural mental maps and ranking order preference developed by Gould, and time geography of Hagerstrand. Then from late 1970s onwards, there was a phase two of the behavioral approach in geography. So this phase one and phase two is the part of the formal behavioral approach in geography as is written in the books and is demanded in the exams mostly. So if a question comes on behavioral approach, it means the period from late 1960s onwards. Before that, it is mostly, you can say, you can write about this particular paragraph if a question is trying to ask you about the usage of behavioralism. I just explained in the previous slide how behavioral approach is different from behavioralism. So behavioralism, you can say that behavioralism was there prevalent in geography even before the 1960s. So that particular philosophy of behavioralism had been prevalent in geography earlier also. So coming back to this phase two of behavioral geography, Coolidge said that positivism was creating hindrance in the development of behavioral approach, and it was Thus, behavioral approach became more analytical and tried to find the reasons for behavior rather than just spatial patterns, which was done in phase 1. So during this period, there was model of environmental perception and behavior developed by Downs, theory of utility maximization developed by Bird, and evaluative mental maps developed by Pipkin. Also, later game theory and probabilistic methods were developed. So one by one, we'll just briefly try to understand the different models developed during the behavioral approach. So the work of Boulding. It was conventional model of man-environmental relationship. So Boulding said that environment and man relationship is bidirectional. You can also see it from the diagram. Then he said that environment has an image on the mind of people, and that particular image influences the behavior, and our behavior in turn influences the environment. So that is how the things go. So that is how the relationship is there between man and environment. So this is the idea of Boulding. So it is a part of the first phase. Then there is behavioral matrix of Pred. So Pred developed a matrix which was used to study the pattern of behavior in space. He said that individuals do not stay at one position and their position changes as they learn more. This is at one position and their position changes as they learn more. So let me try to explain this to you. You can see that as we move towards the horizontal axis, we move towards an optimal solution, and that means increase in ability information. And as we move towards the vertical axis, it means towards perfect knowledge. That is increase in quality and quantity of information. So this increase in quality and quantity of information depends upon spatial factors. Depends on spatial factors. For example, this particular place B12 may be a village, B13 may be a town, and B1N may be a mega city. So, sorry. Yes, this particular place, for example, B12, this may be a village, a small village. B32 can be district headquarters. And DN2 can be a mega city. So as you we are moving from a small isolated village to a mega city, that is, as you are moving in space, there is an increase in quality and quantity of information available. So you must all agree with this, that people in the cities have more better quality and quantity of information available. And we move towards the horizontal axis. It means an increase in ability to use information. For example, at a place B11, there may be orthodox culture, and B1N can represent a very rational culture, rational or inclusive culture. So this is the case, and that is how there is an increase in ability to use information. So this particular thing This depends upon individual traits like culture, individuals or societal traits like culture, political factors. For example, a democracy is always preferred and better than dictatorship. So in democracy, people may have more ability to use information. So that is how you are moving in the matrix. And Fred says that this movement in the matrix can be both forward and backward. For example, in a mega city, you can move from orthodox cultures to towards this more rational cultures, or you can also move backwards. Like you can say that this is the case, this moving backwards is the case that is happening with India today. It's really sad the way things are going on. So another thing is the structural mental maps and ranking order preference, which was developed by Gould to find the common pattern and mental images of people and that determine their behavior in space. So Gould is trying to find the common pattern in the mental images of people. So let me give you an example of the structural mental maps. For example, you can ask people that what is their first preference of child. It can be a boy or a girl. Then you can ask them their second preference, the preference for second child preference. So this can also be a boy or a girl. So for example, in South India, I'm just giving an example, not the reality. The first preference may be boy, preference for first child, and preference for second child may be a girl. And in some states like Meghalaya, it can be girl and girl. States like Haryana, it can be boy and boy. So you collect this data from different regions and you basically make generalizations. So try to find pattern and then you can arrive at a conclusion that northwestern India has a higher preference for male child. Correct. So this is how you are developing mental maps and ranking the preference of different regions. So this was the idea of Gould. Structural mental maps. It is very important. So now coming to the phase 2 of different models in phase 2. There was the model of environmental perception and behavior developed by Townes. So his idea was a little bit different from that of Boulding. And he said that suppose you start from here, the real world. And real world will give you information and you receive that information through perceptual receptors. And then your filters act upon that information, your value system acts upon that information, and finally a person develops an image of the real world in his mind, and that image leads to a decision by an individual. The decision affects his behavior, which in turn affects the real world or the objective world. So that is how human environment interaction takes place as per Downes. So this was his idea, and he's giving, you can see he's giving importance to these filters, these perceptual filters, that how our minds filter information differently based upon our experiences. So unlike Bolting, he is going into the reasons of why some individuals perceive same reality in different manners. How different individuals perceive the same reality, the real world, which is the reality, is same, but different individuals perceive it in different manners due to the presence of their different value system and different filters. Then there was theory of utility maximization, and it was given by Bird. And he said that decision makers always select from choices available to them. So this in this particular theory, Bird said that you collect all the choices a person has. Fine, these are all the choices. Then from these all choices, you discard some choices due to external factors. Then you discard some more choices due to internal factors. Then you discard some more choices due to external constraints. Then you discard some more choices due to internal constraints. So whatever you are left with this particular choice, so that is your decision. So for example, external factors can include factors like due to the politico-economic situation prevailing. For example, people in Syria have limited choices, correct, due to several factors that inhibit their choices, like females may not be allowed to go to school, so their choices already become limited. So this is due to external factors. Internal factors can include some choices like psychology of an individual. For example, an individual may not want to study sciences, so his science wala part is removed from his factor. So if this is the portion of choices that compel him to move towards studying sciences, then this portion is removed. Then this portion is removed, this portion is already removed, correct. Then there may be some external constraints, like some social norms may be there, or there may be some money constraints. So sorry, money, social norms, these are external constraints. Money constraint is a part of internal constraint. So due to some social norms, he has to neglect these choices. For example, if a person wants to go to study to a different city, but the social norms prevalent not allow that, so his choices are automatically limited. Then this is removed, this is removed, this is removed, and from this, but these leftover choices, this much are also removed. Why? Due to internal constraints. Internal constraints like lack of money availability. For example, whether to teach him in a local school, a person at a local school in or a private school, or a government school, or a private school. So if he doesn't have money, the choice of private school is automatically removed. So the final option is to teach him in the same locality in a government school. So this is the decision that he makes. So this is the idea of utility maximization given by Bird. Then let us talk about another approach of evaluative mental maps given by Pipkin. So he said that we must study the factors that people consider important and how these affect decision making. So again, you can see he's going into the reasons of decision making. And what is an evaluative mental map and how is it different from a structural mental map? So evaluative mental map is trying to study the factors that people consider important. For example, we can ask people to rank which is more important in order of preference to them. For example, is economic status important to them, or social status, or religious status, or psychological status. So any person is asked to rank. For example, number one for him is most important is social status, then economic status, then religious, and then psychological. It may be different for different persons. So that is how you try to analyze this information for a given group of people and see that what factors are more important and how are they affecting decision making. So let us now delve into the criticism of behavioralist approaches. So behavioralist approaches were there from 1970s to late 80s. So during this time, the challenging approaches, as you know, were humanistic approaches, radicalism, environmentalism, and welfare approaches. And later, late 1990s onwards, there was functional approaches, and also there was challenge by the structuralism. So humanistic geographers will be so behavioralist approaches will be criticized by all these challenging approaches. So for example, humanistic geographers criticized behavioralist geographers for their neo-positivistic attitude. They said that humans are not their true self under laboratory conditions. Self under laboratory conditions, and their behavior can't be generalized into models and theories. They criticized the inductive methodology and advocated existential phenomenology to understand the phenomena. So what is existential phenomenology? We will deal in the lesson on humanistic approaches. Structuralists said that human actions are determined by underlying structures that are environmental structures, cultural structures, psychological structures, economic structures, and political structures. So they said that the focus should be on the study of all these structures, but behavioralists are focusing only upon psychological factors and neglecting other factors. Marxist geographers said that behavioral geography is justifying the capitalism and it is neglecting the ill effects of capitalism, which are leading to rising inequalities. Functional and applied approaches criticized behavioral approach for not being of much use in solving real world problems, like practical problems they are not able to solve by only making models and theories. Environmentalists argue that instead of focusing only on psychological aspects, focus should be also have been on environmental degradation and solution to overcome it. So this is psychological aspects. So this is the criticism of behavioralist approach. However, as a conclusion on in the question on the criticism of behavioralist approach, you can always write some good points and how behavioralist approach helped. That is the appraisal of behavioralist approach. This is the appraisal of behavioralist approach. So it is said that in spite of several shortcomings, behavioralist approach has helped ensure continuity of positivistic philosophy and provided several models and theories to understand geographical activity in space. And such generalizations are today used in big data analytics and with the help of information technology, supercomputers. So this development of models and theories, analysis of human behavior is widely used today. You know how this Facebook and Google, WhatsApp, how all these companies collect data and analyze them to find behavioral patterns and our preferences and choices. So this approach is still being used. So guys, this is it for today. And like, share, subscribe and comment to spread the word about this initiative. Thank you.